Welcome back. As you probably know, Fuji got busy as of late, and they released together the XT50 and the new kit zoom lens, the 16 to 50, and at the same time they released the Fuji GFX 100S Mark II together with the 500mm F5.6 wildlife telephoto lens for the GFX system. Now, this video is going to be about the GFX and the 500mm, while this video that you find over here or here is the other video that I made about the XT50 and the new kit lens. So go check that out if you're interested in that. The reason why I'm splitting the videos is that probably if you're interested in the XT50, you probably don't have much interest in the GFX and vice versa. If you're interested in both, watch both and you're gonna know everything about them. That being said, I was invited by Fujifilm Italia in Milan to test out these products during the release, and I'm really thankful for that, but as you probably understand, it's just a few hours of testing a lot of stuff and with a lot of people around, so you don't have the time to come up with a proper review of both the lens or the camera. So this video is a very first look, first impressions on the camera and on what we've been told about the cameras and the lenses, and that's it. I will do my best to push out a proper review once the material becomes available for me to test out. But until then, just take this video as a first look video. I wanted to make sure that there's no misunderstanding in that. Now let's talk about the GFX 100S Mark II. Now, if you've tried any GFX 100S or even the 50S, the body itself, the button placement, everything, the grip, everything feels pretty much the same. You will feel right at home. Nothing has changed from a handling perspective because everything is pretty much the same. Of course, they made it a little bit more lightweight thanks to the use of materials. There's a little bit lightweight, but we're talking about a few grams, something that you wouldn't notice until you're told about it. So that is not the big difference. From the exterior, the biggest and more visible difference is the new texture on the outside of the camera. They call it bitumen text finish. And aside from looking better, which it does, it looks a lot better. This is the same finish that you find in the GFX 100 Mark II, so the flagship camera of the GFX line. Aside from looking better, that finish makes the camera look and feel a lot grippier. Once you use that and you go back to the old one, you will realize how much more grippier than the new texture is. And if you're handling a camera, feeling that it's not gonna slip out of your hand makes a lot of a difference when it comes to the confidence. Now, of course, there are improvements in the camera. I'm not saying it's the same camera, but what's the majority of the improvements are under the hood, something that you don't see from the outside. The new camera, of course, as you would come to expect, uses the new X processor 5 that is keeping now all the new generation cameras from both the X line and GFX line. And it also sports the new sensor. It's still 102 megapixels, but they have upgraded the micro lenses to make it gather more light and it be better as a general image quality. And now the base ISO goes to 80 rather than 100, and you can extend it down to 40 ISO if you need it. The higher end ISO goes to 12,800, and you can extend it in one-stop increments up to 100,000, 200 and whatever. So 100,000, 200 and whatever. So overall, new sensor, which, by the way, it's not the same sensor that is equipping the GFX 100 Mark II. That sensor, despite sharing the same resolution, 102 megapixel, and basically the same optical performance, is a faster sensor thanks to the additional circuitry that makes it faster. So GFX 100 Mark II has the 102 megapixel sensor 2HS, which stands for high speed, while this camera has the 102 megapixel CMOS Mark II without the HS. You will see that the performance difference when it comes to photo is not that much, it's more targeted to video, but it's worth being mentioned. This sensor, however, represents state of the art. We're going to talk about the image quality in a moment, but it represents state of the art when it comes to the image quality for medium format sensors. They also improved, of course, with a new processor, they improved the snappiness, the usability, the autofocus, everything is improved. It works much faster and it feels much more like your normal camera, your everyday camera, rather than the clunky, slow, cumbersome medium format cameras you've been used to think of. And this is a process that Fuji is putting together since a while ago. So they're trying to make these cameras look and feel much more everyday rather than studio-centric cameras. And the release of the new lens goes in that direction as well, but we'll talk about that in a moment. They also improved the IBIS, which is a couple of stops better. They claim it's a couple of stops better. Now, I couldn't try a lot, but I was shooting with the 500mm at slower shutter speed and it was doing great. So it's a very good IBIS system. Of course, in that case, there was also the stabilization on the lens to help. So I will further expand on that once I have a camera to review, but they claim they've improved at least a couple of stops on the IBIS. They've also improved, and you can see that the electronic viewfinder. The new electronic viewfinder is 5.76 million dots compared to the previous 3.79, I guess. And the new resolution, it's bigger, it's got a better eye relief, although by a small margin. It's a 0.84 magnification. It's a better viewfinder. It's something that once you start using the camera, you notice immediately it's an improvement over the previous version, which, by the way, I am testing right now. I will push out a review as soon as I'm done with it. And it's a great camera already. They've improved on that quite a bit. Now, from a photography standpoint, as I mentioned already, this sensor, this camera is state of the art. You can hardly find something that performs better than what this camera does when it comes to photography in any other system. It's a 100 megapixel sensor that shoots 16-bit RAW, which are big files, are huge files. That's why at the end of the day, with a camera that only shoots on SD cards, you are kind of limited when it comes to burst and frame rates, because this camera only does 7 FPS with the mechanical shutter for a relatively limited amount of frames. But from an image quality standpoint, you get files that when you start looking at them at your computer and you zoom in, you see that there's something different. They are sharp, plenty of dynamic range. They are beautiful to look at. It's impossible to blow highlights. It's impossible to even if you mess the exposure, you have so much latitude to work with that you will always recover your file. And even the at high ISO, despite the super high resolution, the camera performs incredibly well. 3200 ISO are great. You don't have to worry about grain or noise or anything like that. They are really, really, really great. And again, this camera, this system, it's all about image quality and it doesn't let you down. We're talking about top-notch image quality from whichever angle you look at it. And that's what the GFX system is. That's what the GFX system is all about. As I mentioned, with the new processor, the autofocus got a lot faster, a lot snappier. Now, of course, it all depends on the lens you're using it with, because the GFX system still has some older lenses that are slower. You can feel the autofocusing system on the lens making a little bit of noise, seeing that it's not moving fast enough and it's not the camera's fault. But for example, with the 500 F5.6, which is a super new autofocusing system, and they optimized it, the autofocus is super snappy, super fast, and very reliable. Something that would be it was crazy to think about only 5 or 6 years ago when Fuji started to really invest on the GFX system as their top-notch system. So Fuji has made strides when it comes to autofocus on medium format cameras. They're clearly better than anyone else in that section of the market, and they're improving on that. This camera, provided you are using it with the right lenses, is going to be fast enough for everything that you're throwing at it. You can the eye tracking was working great with models and all of that, and I didn't really think, oh man, I'm feeling the difference between this and the XH2S. I really didn't, and that's a lot to say because I like the way the XH2S works with autofocus. So really good camera, in like all around camera. And if you think about the price, which we'll discuss in a second, it's crazy. It's really crazy. Now, a camera like this, from a video standpoint, is where you basically have the majority of differences compared to the bigger brother, the GFX 102. Just because the high-speed sensor allows for more accessibility from a resolution standpoint in video, from a frame rate standpoint, and a lot of that. That being said, however, this camera tops at 4K 30 FPS with H.265 422 10 bits, or if you're recording externally, you can also use ProRes. But they made this camera better to the extent that you can now use a higher bandwidth. You can get up to 720 megabytes per second, which is a crazy amount. I don't know how many people are going to use that, but if you need it, it's there, and the camera works with that. However, if you're thinking about making your medium format camera your main video camera as well, you should probably look at spending a little bit more and get the higher end model for Fujifilm. That being said, again, this camera is still really good when it comes to videos, as long as you're okay with the specs that you get with it. It's not, let's just say it's not their main business, it's not their main core business of the GFX 100S Mark II, but if you need it, it's there and it's not going to let you down. And just be assured that Fuji is putting a lot of effort into developing the video portion of the GFX cameras for now and for the future. Their roadmap is telling us that they're putting together an electronic zooming lens for the GFX system. That means they are investing in video for the GFX system. So what we're seeing happen before our eyes is basically Fuji pushing the bar of where you can get, as far as sensor size go, to get a proper all-around camera, and it's happening before our eyes. In the span of 1 or 2 generations, I'm pretty sure the medium format video is going to be a thing for many people, and that's crazy to think, but it's also interesting to see where it's going. Now let's talk about the lens, because at the end of the day, this came basically almost out of the blue. And if you think about it, 500mm stabilized lens, which is also, of course, weather sealed with linear motors and with the aperture ring, so it's RLM OIS. It's crazy to think for a medium format system. You wouldn't be thinking about doing wildlife, because at the end of the day, a lens this long is probably aimed at wildlife photographers or something like that. And it was crazy to think about this possibility only 3 or 4 years ago. So Fuji is definitely pushing the bar quite a bit forward, higher to with regard to what they want to do with the medium format system. And this lens, among all the things that were released together in this round of releases. This is the craziest release they've done, because this lens is a medium format 500mm f5.6 lens, so it's a 400mm equivalent in full frame terms. Now, this lens weighs only 1.375 kilos. Think about it. Medium format lens, this long, fast when it comes to the aperture, it weighs 1.375 lens. For comparison, the highly praised Sigma 500mm f5.6 for full frame weighs more than this, or basically the same, and it's for a much smaller sensor size. It's crazy. It's really, what they have done with this lens, it's crazy. And they have spent, during the presentation, they spent a lot of time on that, explaining how they were able to do that. They basically shaved every possible gram from the way the lens is built, making sure not to make it weak. It's a sturdy lens. You can tell it's a sturdy lens, but at the same time, it's super lightweight. Once you put it on the camera and start using it, you don't think, it's never gonna hit you that you're using medium format gear. That's crazy. That is really, really crazy. They have also done one thing that they were really proud of. They have moved the vast majority of the lenses toward the camera, towards the mount, to make sure that the lens is super well balanced once you're using it on the camera. They made everything, they crammed everything at the back end of the lens, only leaving the front elements and shaving a lot of weight here and there to make it be very balanced. And also, and this helps the autofocus a lot, and you can tell while using the lens, they made the autofocusing lens super small and super lightweight. That means the autofocusing motors have to move a very small element, and it can be much, much faster than your typical medium format lens. I am really impressed by the construction and the layout of the lens, the way it feels in the ends. Now, of course, all of these wouldn't make much sense if the lens was bad from an optical standpoint, but be assured, the lens is incredibly good. It's sharp, it's super sharp. Like, you can, it's one of the sharpest lenses that I've ever used. Now, of course, telephoto lenses are easier to be sharp. Telephoto prime lenses are easier to be sharp than wide-angle zooms, of course, because the optical formula is a little bit simpler from this standpoint. But nonetheless, it's a super sharp lens. The bokeh is so beautiful. It's really super beautiful. You're seeing some example right now. There's really nothing to complain about. Now, of course, this is just a first look, but from the first picture that I saw, it's crazy. Now, of course, I want to try this lens in its environment, which, of course, is not portrait. It's not urban environment. It's wildlife. It's in the wild. I want to try that. I will request to be able to do that. To be able to do that, because if the medium format system becomes usable for wildlife as well, well, those 100 megapixel are gonna make a lot of a difference. And by the way, this lens is also compatible with the 1.4 teleconverter, which would make this lens 720 f8 lens, which, again, medium format, it's crazy to think about. I am, as you probably can tell, I'm very impressed with what they did with this lens. Now, let's talk about prices. And I can only get you good news, at least compared to the market, okay? The new GFX 100S Mark II is priced at $4,999 in the US and 5,600 euros in Italy. That is basically $1,000 less than the previous model for a camera that is better in every possible aspect. They've improved pretty much everything, and they didn't improve the only thing that they didn't need to improve, which is the form factor, which is great. It's really it's exactly what you want from a camera like this. So a much better camera, a much faster camera, a better handling from the grip perspective, better viewfinder, better autofocus, faster camera, snappier, all of that good stuff comes in a moment where all the prices are going up, comes at $1,000 less than the previous model. Now that is crazy. That is telling you that Fuji is trying to do with the GFX system what Sony did back when they launched their full-frame mirrorless camera system, which is I'm selling not at a loss probably, but I'm selling with a lower profit that I could ask for because I want to flood the market with those. I want to set the tone for that market segment, and I want to dominate that. And this is clear because now what they're doing, they're bringing out lenses that you would probably not need now, but you will need in the future. When the next generation of camera is going to be able to do 10 frames per second, 15 frames per second. Right now, this camera can do 7, and the GFX 102 can do 8 with mechanical. You will have the lenses ready, waiting for you to get to the next level. And that is crazy. That is really crazy. What Fujifilm is doing is telling people that are interested in high megapixel full frame cameras, hey guys, just think about that. You can get a lot more, even from a megapixel standpoint, spending a few dollars more. Because right now, 60 megapixel cameras, with the exception of the Sony A7R II, which is not as complete of a camera as you probably want, but they are from close to $4,000, and they even go up if you think about Leica SL and all of that. You cannot, with the new generation of cameras that Fuji is putting out, you cannot say I'm not interested in that system because it's not for me. Because unless you need 20 frames per second, 40 frames per second, which you don't get with 60 megapixel cameras anyways, but unless you need a little bit more portability, unless you need those few things that those cameras do for you, if you're talking about image quality, and if you're talking about landscapes, if you're talking about portraits, and now if you want to also try wildlife, you can do that with the GFX system at a reasonable price. Because if you think about that, it's crazy. There's full-frame cameras that cost $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 more than this. And that is crazy. It's crazy to think about because the image quality you get out of these cameras, of the GFX, is just mind-blowing. And the lens, it's sold at $3,499 in the US and almost 4,000 euros in Italy. And yes, it's not cheap, of course, but for example, the same Sigma that I mentioned before, it's a third-party lens that is selling for multiple mounts, so it's going to sell a lot more samples. Well, that lens is priced at $3,000 anyways, so we're talking about $500 more than a third-party lens for a smaller camera system. Again, Fuji is being aggressive with the pricing on their GFX line, much more aggressive than they are doing with their APS-C sensor line. And it's a great time right now to be thinking about going medium format because you get a lot of technology, a lot of quality, a lot of performance also with a much more reasonable price. A price that is in competition with full-frame cameras. So what is happening now is crazy, it's great, and I believe Fuji is doing the right thing with the expansion of their GFX system because at the end of the day, they're trying to get past that full frame mindset. Full frame is the best thing in the world mindset that many people have, by going again more than full frame, and now prices are getting human. Human, of course, not everybody can afford these prices, but compared to what's available in the market. In conclusion, what can I say? You probably know, you probably understand that I was pretty impressed by this new medium format camera and lens release, and I'm also very excited about the future of that GFX system, because it's crazy. What is happening is just crazy, and crazy in a good way. Again, the image quality is impressive. The prices are getting more and more competitive as we speak, and I'm sure by the next generation, or the second to next, we're gonna get GFX cameras that are gonna be 100% in competition with top of the line full frame cameras, even from a speed standpoint. And at that point, if the argument of going with the bigger sensor is true for those that say that full frame is better than APS-C, at that point, the same argument must be used to say, well, if full frame is better than APS-C, medium format is better than full frame. And with the lenses and the performance that you will get out of those, and you already get out of those, it's going to be hard for people to just say, no, it's not true, I'm being limited by this or that. You're basically not. You're not being limited. So it's a great time to be a GFX user, or to be thinking about becoming a GFX user. Guess that's it for today. I'll try to review the new products as soon as possible. Ciao, and I'll see you in the next one.